All right, it is officially that time. Welcome to our free webinar. My name is Jennifer Bonner, and I serve as the tutor team lead here at Archer Review. I'm a certified nurse midwife with over 15 years of nursing experience. I've worked in ICUs, endoscopy, labor and delivery, postpartum. I've done quite a bit. So today we're going to go through a subject that's incredibly important in our career as nurses, legal and ethical concepts. So I am glad you're here. We will be using Slido. If you are familiar with our webinars in the past, we use something called Slido. I will have a QR code that will pop up and you can just scan that with your phone, or you can join on slido.com and I will have a code for you to input that will get you into all things answering questions today. So I'm excited that you're here. Just a few things. If you have questions, we have the lovely Rachel Devon in our chat today. So if you have questions and you're joining me on Zoom, please go ahead and put your questions in the questions and answer box. If you just have an answer that you're wanting to share, you can go ahead and put that in the webinar chat. So let's get started. Let's see, where is everyone joining from? You can scan this code with your device. That should get you right into Slido, or you can join at slido.com and you're going to put in the code capital A, capital R, followed by legal lowercase, and that should get you in. Seeing Las Vegas, Edmonton, California, Calgary. All right, Philippines, welcome. Man, it is probably the middle of the night for you there. UK, New York, Texas, Indiana. Hey, welcome. Virginia, Dubai. Awesome. Florida, California, Long Island. We have students joining us from all over. Seeing more Philippines, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City. Hi, Elmas. The code is right there on the screen. It's capital A, capital R, followed by lowercase legal. The Bahamas. Oh, man. Wish I was joining you. So the recording for this session will actually be available on our Facebook platform after we're finished. It's streaming live there as well, for those of you who are asking. All right. Well, we have all over the United States and really all over the world covered. So I'm excited that you're here. Let's get started with a question. So why is it important, do you think, for nurses to understand legal and ethical concepts? Why do you think that's important? You can put it there in Slido for me. Why do you think it's important for nurses to understand legal and ethical concepts? Someone's saying accountability. Yes, absolutely. Safety and protection. To protecting ourselves, protecting our clients, appropriate and safe care. We'll have to make these decisions as future nurses. Working with vulnerable populations, making sure there's accountability and for protection, clients and ourselves, rights and privacy. Yes, absolutely. Dignity, protecting ourselves, safety. Absolutely. So all of these things are correct. It is very important for us to understand and practice by these legal and ethical concepts that are being shared today. Let me turn on my closed captions. Thank you for somebody reminding me. I appreciate that. Okay. So someone is saying they can't see the slides. If you are having an issue, please let me know. It looks like it's functioning well on my end. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first thing that we're going to start with is terminology. There's a good bit of terminology that you'll be expected to know for the NCLEX. And if you're someone who struggles with memorization, one of my favorite ways to do this is to create flashcards. And so what I would do is I would make flashcards for the major terms that we're going to go through. And then I would make separate cards with the definition. And then I would mix them up and see if I can match them correctly. That's a great way to work on memorization. So let's start with justice. Justice. Justice is essentially, is it fair? Are we distributing our care evenly and administering our care fairly? So, an example, making impartial medical decisions, being fair when distributing care, for example, among the clients in the group, the clients that we're taking care of. Care must be fairly, justly, and equitably distributed among a group of clients. So that is justice. Is it fair? Now, beneficence. Beneficence is often confused with non-maleficence, which we're going to get to that here in just a minute. They sound very similar. But beneficence is doing good. Are we doing the right thing for our client? An example of a nurse demonstrating this ethical principle is by holding a dying client's hand, supporting them so they're not alone. This is a way that we can show beneficence. Okay. Are we doing good? Are we doing the right thing for our client? Now, I said that beneficence and non maleficence sometimes become a little bit confused if you're anything like myself. Non maleficence is doing no harm. Now, we see that this word starts with non. This usually goes hand in hand with the word not. Non, not. We are not doing harm. Okay. So, an example of nurses demonstrating this principle would be things like avoiding negligent care of a client. We are not intentionally, not unintentionally doing harm. That is non maleficence. All right, let's go back to Slido. Get ready. What ethical principle below is accurately paired with a way the ethical principle is applied to the nursing practice? We have beneficence, justice, veracity, and fidelity. We're going to do a few of these questions. I like doing these questions as we go through because it helps us to see, are we understanding what it is that we are studying? Now, when I have a question that's like this, I want to make sure, does the term that I'm looking at pair up with the definition that it's giving me? So in this first question, we see, or in the first option, we see beneficence, doing no harm during the course of nursing care. Do those match up? What about justice? The obligation to be fair, equally dividing the time and other resources among a group of clients. Do those two match up? What about veracity? Fully answering the client's questions without any withholding of information. Fidelity, upholding the American Nurses Association's code of ethics. What do you think? I'm seeing a lot of great answers already coming through. Give you 5, 10 more seconds, and we will check out the answer here. The ones I'm seeing come through look awesome. Excellent job. All right, here we go. So you guys are actually doing really well. So let's see. A lot of you chose justice. Some of you chose veracity. Some chose beneficence. Okay, so we're a little bit all over the board. So let's see what our answer here is. Our answer is actually C. So when we are fully answering our clients' questions without withholding any of that information, that is an application of veracity. Veracity is being truthful with our clients. Nurses must not withhold the whole truth from our clients, even when it might lead to their distress. So we'll visit that here in just a minute. Let's look at another question. The nurse is planning a staff development conference about changing the process of how clients are seen at a clinic to a first come, first served basis. This proposed change will model which ethical principle? Is it non maleficence? Is it veracity, paternalism, or justice? If we're changing the process of how we see clients to a first come, first serve basis, what do you think that is showing? Which ethical principle? Excellent. Rachel Devon just said when we're thinking about justice, equal does not mean equitable. We want to provide equitable care, meaning some clients might require more time or resources. All right, let's see how we did with this question. Here we go. If you answered letter D, you are correct. Awesome job. Many of you got that one. Justice is that ethical principle that's centered around equality. We have our clients being seen in the first come, first serve manner. We're not giving special treatment or preference to a particular individual. Great job. Excellent. All right, let's take a moment and talk about our Sure Pass program. This is our number one recommended program. I absolutely love this. I wish there was something like this when I was in nursing school. But this is going to include our Q Bank with questions that you can go through with rationales for each of them, on demand videos. The on demand videos are amazing. We also have our 3-day live review. Our 3-day live review is offered once a month, generally during the first Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of the month. And you are going to hear from experts in all areas of nursing. And so, what we do is we go through areas of specialties, we go through basics, we go through, oh man, ABGs. Can you believe it? We enjoy being able to work with our students. And the wonderful thing about our 3-day live review is that as we're presenting, you have the opportunity to interact with us back and forth through chat and Q&A. We also do lots of questions throughout this time. And then the wonderful thing is that if at the end of the 3-day live review, you're still struggling with some of those areas, you can go back to those on demand videos for further clarification. We also have daily live lectures. So if you're interested, if you're wanting more information, we have the QR codes there. The one on the left is for registered nurses. The one on the right is for our LPNs. So this is an amazing bundle. I recommend it for all of my students. All right, so let's talk about accountability. This one should not be new to you as a nurse, but accountability is taking responsibility for our actions, for the care we provide, the medications that we give. Occasionally, something may go wrong in a situation. Accountability is accepting the consequences and taking responsibility. So we're going to take responsibility for our actions. We are going to accept responsibility when needed. Okay. So we're going to accept those consequences. We're going to take responsibility. An example of this would be we're not going to blame someone else if we make a mistake. I've seen this happen when I was a new nurse. Something similar where the wrong medication was pulled, someone else was asked to give that medication. Well, it was the wrong medication. So that person shouldn't have given it if they didn't pull that medication. But the response was, well, I was just given the medication and told to give it. We're going to take responsibility for our actions when it comes to accountability. Now, what about fidelity? Fidelity, I think F for fidelity, F for faithful. Okay. So F for fidelity, F for faithful. Being faithful, keeping our promises, even in our responsibilities as a nurse. So a good example of this would be if a client requests that a nurse not reveal their terminal diagnosis to their family. So let's say we have someone there in the ICU, they just got a terminal diagnosis, they got some really hard news. Well, their family is coming in to visit them and they say, please, Jennifer, I don't want you to tell my family about my diagnosis. When we are practicing fidelity, we are not going to disclose this information without the permission of the client. Now, later on, the client can say, hey, Jennifer, I really didn't want this disclosed, but I really would like for you to help me tell my family what's going on. Then in that case, we have our client's permission. We can go ahead and do that. But with fidelity, if they ask us not to disclose that, we have a responsibility to our client. Autonomy. Now, many times we think of this from a client perspective, right? Client autonomy. Autonomy from the nursing perspective is accepting the client as a unique client who has the right to their own opinions, their own values, their own beliefs. This means we will not pressure our client to make the decision that we would make if we were in their situation. But we should also not judge them for the decision that they make or coerce them to make a different decision. This also means our client has the right to refuse any and all treatment. So examples of nurses demonstrating this would include obtaining informed consent from the client for a treatment, asking or accepting the situation when a client refuses a medication. You're refusing it? Okay. And maintaining confidentiality. Here's a common one that can pop up on the NCLEX. A client who is a practicing Jehovah's Witness who needs a blood transfusion. It is vital. We are not going to judge them or coerce them to make a different decision just because we would do something different. We're going to respect their religious beliefs. We're going to give them the information, and that will be all when we're practicing autonomy. The client has the right to make their own decision. The last of our ethical principles that we're going to discuss is veracity. Now, remember, we had a question on this just a few minutes ago. When I think of veracity, I think very truthful. Veracity, very truthful. We are telling the truth. But what about if we don't give the full truth? When I was little, I brought a jacket to school, but I didn't want to wear it outside for recess. It was kind of ugly. My teacher asked me where my coat was, and I told her I didn't bring one. When she opened up my locker, which I definitely wasn't expecting, she picked up my jacket and asked me, Jennifer, what is this? And my response was, that's a jacket. That's not a coat. I omitted part of the truth. I knew what she was asking, but I omitted part of the truth to go in my favor. And that made it a lie by omitting part of the truth. We don't get to decide what our client learns about their diagnosis. It's their right to know. So, this is even if we think the news might upset them. There have been a few times in practice when I had to give a client news that they had cancer. Most people don't want this type of news, but it's their right to know. I don't get to decide which parts that they get to know either. I realize that my client might not take the news of cancer very well, so I won't tell her it's terminal. Practicing veracity, I tell her the full truth. Another example that I've seen quite a bit, especially in the world of pediatrics, is telling a kiddo, don't worry, this won't hurt at all. But we know that it actually will. We don't want them to be scared, which is very kind. We don't want anyone to be scared, but that goes against this ethical principle of veracity. Here's another one, lying for the sake of convenience. Have you ever told a client that something isn't possible or it has to be done earlier than usual? Like waking in the early hours of the morning so that you can get through your work sooner, or because you're just too busy? Maybe in the last part of your shift, as you're trying to leave, a client asks for an extra pillow. You are all done. You're ready to go home. You're ready to go to bed. So you tell them, sorry, we're all out of pillows. It doesn't sound like a big deal, does it? But it actually goes against the ethical principle of veracity. These concepts are so important to understand, but it's also important that we understand how to apply them on the NCLEX. So let's look at one together. The nurse is in an elevator and observes two staff members discussing a client's condition. The nurse understands that this conversation may potentially violate which ethical principle? Is it beneficence? confidentiality, autonomy, or veracity? Already seeing some answers come through. Many of you are getting this one. All right, let's see our answer. Confidentiality. So the conversation that is happening violates our client's confidentiality. Now, we may be having a conversation with someone who is involved in our client's care, but there may be other people on that elevator who have nothing to do with that client and can overhear. Now, legal concepts can cause some varying feelings. After all, we went to or are going to nursing school, not law school, right? But there are a few terms that I want you to be aware of as they apply to our practice as nurses. The first two that we're going to discuss are advance directives and living wills. Advance directive is a set of instructions someone's preparing to advance and they're preparing in advance, of ill health that determines his or her healthcare wishes. So it's something that they're preparing for beforehand in case this were to happen. Many times people will have these as they're getting older, understanding that they may have a time when decisions need to be made about their care and they will not be able to make those decisions. So this document is going to tell their loved ones what they want done in certain medical situations. It just states what their wishes are. Living will is a little bit different, but it is a type of advance directive that becomes effective when a person is terminally ill. Now, both of these are legal documents with the goal of the client making their wishes known. They can specify what the client is and isn't okay with. For example, they might be okay with being on a ventilator, but they might say, if I'm on it for 5 days without any progress, we need to discontinue this. Not only do we need to know what these documents are, but we need to make sure that we read them and understand and exercise the ethical principle of client autonomy. Have you ever watched one of those medical drama shows? You know, the ones I'm talking about, where someone starts chest compressions on a client with DNR, and you're sitting there, maybe you're yelling at your TV going, they have a DNR. This does actually happen from time to time, and we need to advocate for our clients' wishes. That's why it's really important for us to make sure that we read through these documents and understand what those wishes are. A DNR, someone is asking, is a do not resuscitate. When someone does not want to be resuscitated in that instance. So, a few things to consider. The first is in regard to our EMTs. When they are called, they legally must provide that emergency care. But the thing is, they don't have the authority to interpret an advance directive. So, for example, someone collapses at a family picnic. EMS arrives and they're going to provide that emergency care that they are trained for. Just because someone says, hey, Uncle Joe has a DNR, they're not going to leave the client. They are trained to provide emergency care, and that's what they will do. So they transport the client to the hospital, and then things change a little bit. The provider then will evaluate the advance directive and follow the client's wishes. Now, what about if our client is from out of state? Well, there are some states that will still honor these documents, but then there are others that will not. This is why it's essential for anyone who's moving to a new state, whether that's permanently, whether that's temporarily, they need to update their advance directive to the original state in which they will reside. It's also important to know that advance directives do not expire. So if wishes change, a whole new document needs to be prepared for those wishes to be active. Anytime I'm teaching this subject, the question always arises, what if the client is incapacitated and there's no one to make decisions for them? Well, In that case, we need two healthcare providers to evaluate the client and make a recommendation on the client's decision-making abilities. Another legal term you might hear is medical power of attorney. Medical power of attorney, or MPOA, is a legal document designating a specific person to make medical decisions for the client should they not be able to make their own decisions. Now, if the client has not designated someone, depending on which state the client is in, will determine who makes that decision based on the state laws. With this document, the client does they don't spell out their wishes. They basically say, "My wife Gloria gets to decide." Sometimes the client will have this in an advance directive, and the loved one can then be able to reference that advance directive, which makes things a little bit easier because they can read through and go, "Oh, okay, this is what they wanted." Where I live, the person's spouse is given the initial right if they have not specified someone, followed by an adult child, a parent, an adult sibling, a grandparent or adult grandchild, an adult aunt or uncle, or an adult niece or nephew, respectively. When no family members are available or family members do not agree on the decision to be made, the state can make the healthcare decision. They may also determine who's authorized to make that decision or appoint its own representative to make the decision. Because we don't all practice in the same state. We saw that to begin with. We have some who are in the Philippines. We have some who are in Nevada. We have some who are in Indiana. Some of you are in the Bahamas. We don't all practice in the same state. So you'll not see a question on the NCLEX about this chain of command because it varies so much. So someone is asking if a client has a DNR and the staff wasn't aware and already performed CPR, what would happen next? So the thing is, if you are not aware, if we don't have those documents, we are basically performing life-saving measures until we know otherwise. That's a really great question. So there are a few federal laws that we need to talk about. The first one I'm fairly certain you're familiar with is HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This protects our clients' health information and medical records. We'll talk more about this in just a few minutes. The ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. This law prohibits discrimination, specifically against those clients with disabilities. So basically, if it's a public place, if it has public access, it needs to be accessible to those with disabilities. So public pools, public transportation, libraries. So think about those types of places, hospitals, libraries, they have ramps, they have elevators. I was even at our public pool the other day, and there was a lift for those who are unable to walk into the pool. Then we have EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act. This requires stabilization treatment for anyone coming to the ER, regardless of if they have insurance or the ability to pay for services. So all of you ER nurses, this is a point to listen up. This is high priority. Even for those who are using the ER as a primary care facility. Someone shows up and they say, "Oh, I have a runny nose." Even for those clients, if they show up, they have the right to be treated. And this also applies when we're transferring clients. When we send them from the ER to a long-term care facility back to their facility, there is paperwork that shows they were treated and someone is accepting their care. Someone will be calling report. Someone will be talking to one of the facility staff members and documenting that someone is taking their care once they leave. Now, a few legal terms I want you to be aware of. The first one is tort. Now, when I think of tort, I think of a yummy treat, but not in this case. Tort is a wrongful act or infringement of a right. It doesn't specify verbal or physical. It's just an infringement on someone's rights. Negligence is a failure to take care in doing something. So this could be something like you needed to hang a bag of antibiotics that were crucial and instead it was time for your lunch. So you decided to go do that instead. This could cause harm to our client. We didn't take proper care. Malpractice is when the negligence is something legal or improper professional activity or treatment. So we're not up to that standard of care. This can be intentional or unintentional. We don't have to be sitting at the desk making a master plan of how we're going to harm our client. We don't have to be sitting at a desk making a master plan of how we're going to harm our client. It could be something totally unintentional. Assault, on the other hand, is an act that can be criminal or torturous. I am so sorry. Okay, so assault is an act that can be criminal or torturous. Remember the word tort, a wrongful act or infringement of a right that threatens physical harm to a person. It doesn't matter if harm actually occurs. You don't actually have to touch the person. If someone is in your personal space, they're yelling at you, they're right up in your face, this is assault. Now, it becomes battery when physical contact occurs. Battery is unconsented physical contact with another person. Doesn't have to be violent. The last one is false imprisonment, which is really important for us as nurses. False imprisonment is the state of being imprisoned without legal authority. We see this come up on the NCLEX quite a bit when talking about restraints. Now, restraints are a great tool when they're used appropriately, but should be used as a last resort. If we restrain someone without a really good reason, this can be false imprisonment. They must be a danger to themselves or someone else in order for us to legally be able to use restraints. We also can't hold someone against their wishes without authority. So think mental health clients who are being held involuntarily or they're involuntarily committed. This is where a judge determines they should be in the hospital, and this paperwork gives us permission to hold them. If not, we do not have the right to hold them. All right, are you ready for another question? Here we go. The nurse has attended a staff education program about sources of negligent lawsuits. It would indicate effective understanding if the nurse identifies which of the following. Just a couple more seconds. I see some good answers coming in already. All right, let's see. The nurse does not notify the physician of a client's critical laboratory result. If you chose letter C, you are correct. Very good. All right, the nurse cares for an unconscious client with a dissecting aortic aneurysm. Oh, this needs urgent surgery. The client's family cannot be tracked. The nurse's priority action is what? What is the nurse's priority action here? Many of you already putting in your answers. Great work. Yes, it's a medical emergency. They need urgent surgery. Couple more seconds. All right, let's see. Send the client to surgery. Yes, this is a life-saving event. So if you chose letter A, great job. Excellent job. All right, here we go. Here's another one. The nurse is caring for a client who is asking about advance directives. Many documents fall under this category of advance directives. The nurse knows that one of the most common legal papers is called Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare. And that works to do what? Is that reviewing a person's personal preferences for medical care in the future? Authorizing another person to make medical decisions? Assign a legal authority in making medical decisions? Or define what care should be administered or withheld by healthcare professionals? Many of you are already getting this. Seeing a lot of B. Great work. All right, let's see. Here we go. Authorize another person to make medical decisions for a person if they become unable to on their own. Very good. If you chose letter B, you are correct. So that durable power of attorney authorizes someone else to make medical decisions for the client if they are not able to do so themselves. Now, when a client and their healthcare team discuss their future medical preferences, they're creating a document that's called a living will. If a legal authority is assigned to make medical decisions, this person has full authority to make those treatment decisions. Okay, great work. All right, let's talk about another one of my favorite programs that we have here at Archer Review. It's called Intense Prep. And when I say intense prep, it's like boot camp. It is intense, but it is an amazing program. So I usually recommend this program for someone who has been out of nursing school for a while, or maybe they've taken the NCLEX several times and have been unsuccessful. So I want you to go ahead, scan this QR code. Rachel just put the link in the chat for you too. If this is something that you think you might be interested in, please go read about it. See if this is something that you could be able to devote time to. I know you will see amazing results from that. We have amazing tutors that meet weekly. They have prepared various lectures for you. They give you feedback. It's an awesome program. All right, so we talked about this just a little bit before, but let's dive a little bit deeper into HIPAA. This is such an important concept to understand. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This is protecting our clients' information. So there's a specific rule within HIPAA that I want you to be aware of. It's called directory information. So think of like a phone book. This is the client's name and where the facility is. This is okay under the act, but if someone asks, how are they doing? What's their diagnosis? This is not covered, and we need permission from our client to share this information. Clients say sometimes that they don't want to be looked up. They can specify this. If someone calls the hospital for my information, or they're looking to see if I'm here, I don't want you to tell them that I'm here. And they have the right to do that. When we're talking provider to provider, we're going to function under the rule that if a person does not need the information to do their job, we're not going to share it. For instance, if I'm handing off report, that next nurse is going to need this information to do their job. But if I see my friend from Zumba class while I'm at work and we're chatting in the lunchroom, I don't need to share this information because she doesn't need it to do her job. Ways that we can protect client information is by turning off our computer or logging off when we're not using it. We're not going to talk about our clients in public places. So remember, back to that question about the elevator. Even if I'm talking to someone who might need that information to do their job, there can be other people in the elevator that do not need that information. And we're certainly not going to post on social media. Even if you personally know the client, do not post on social media. We don't go looking into charts that we're not taking care of that client. I, at one time, worked in Louisville, Kentucky, and there's this big horse race every year. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called the Kentucky Derby. This event brings in so many people from all over the country, from all over the world, even really famous people. So if one of those famous people came to the hospital and I start getting curious and I go digging through their chart and I'm actually not taking care of them, I have violated HIPAA. The other thing to remember is that the IT department can see exactly where we have been. All right, so let's jump into another question. The nurse is planning a staff development conference about confidentiality. Which of the following scenarios should the nurse include as a violation of client confidentiality? Seeing some great answers coming through already. Excellent job. Couple more seconds. All right, let's see. If you answered letter B, you are correct. So the results of that urine drug screen are confidential, and that should not be pierced because an individual is a police officer. It doesn't matter. If that officer is requiring you the results, they need a legal court order. Great job. Now, my next favorite thing to talk about is private tutoring. We have some of the best private tutors around. These women are absolutely amazing. Now, one thing to note about private tutoring is that they are completely individualized. You get to determine what we talk about. These sessions are an hour each and they are $75 per hour. But booking three or more, you can get a discount. So go ahead, scan the code here. It'll bring you to the availability of what is out there. It will also show you who's offering what private tutor sessions. These are available every day of the week. If you find that there's something that you need, let's say, I really need a session on a Saturday between the hours of 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. Well, what I want you to do is I want you to send us a email at nclextutors@archerreview.com and let us know. Hey, I would like a private tutoring session on these days from this time, and make sure that you include where you are. So make sure you let us know what time zone you're in so that we can adequately help you with that. All right, so documentation. Who loves documentation? It is so vital to what we do. The medical record we document in can be used in a court of law. This is why we discuss it here, because it relates to law and ethics. Documentation can actually be used in a lawsuit for 10 years after care. Can you believe that? 10 years. There are some days that I can't even remember what happened yesterday or what I had to drink this morning. I surely won't remember that in 5 years from now. That's why we need to be really great charters. And this comes with time. Remember, there are others who can see what we are charting. There's other providers, even the client. It can also be reviewed by Joint Commission, Medicare, Medicaid, and other quality assurance committees. Now, when we talk about documentation, there's a few things that we need to consider. When I was first starting my job as a mid-level provider, there was a coder in our office who told me to treat each chart like it's going to court. And I have kept that with me from that very day. So here are some things that can help us make sure to chart well. We're going to chart in real time. We need to be charting things for the actual time it's happening. And we're only going to chart under our name and our credentials. We chart accurately. So if we're quoting a client, we use the same words that the client did. This can be difficult sometimes, especially if our client is using foul language. But if it's important for our charting, we're going to use the exact language that the client used when we're quoting them. We're also not going to chart early. Things can change so fast. So let's say that we're rounding early. We're going to round early so that we can go to lunch early. And when we round early, we note that Mr. Smith is resting comfortably, and then we charted ahead for 10:30 p.m., but it's actually 10:20 p.m. 10 minutes later, we're downstairs getting something to eat, and we hear the code called overhead. 10 minutes later, now it's 10:30, Mr. Smith codes. This can look a little bit suspicious. We also want to make sure that we do not chart for someone else or as someone else. So we are not going in under someone else's credentials and charting for them. The last thing is we want to be objective in our charting. When we're caring for clients in the hospital, they're not generally having the best day. They may be acting in ways or saying things that they wouldn't normally do. And this can sometimes create opinions of them, and we want to refrain from documenting these opinions. If necessary, we want to use the quotations that we talked about earlier. All right, let's look at some questions about documentation. Here we go. What are some ways we can make sure our documentation is accurate and also efficient? What do you think? What are some ways we can make sure that our documentation is accurate and also efficient? Let me know there in Slido. Dated and precise. Yes. Documenting in real time. Absolutely. Charting in real time. Being clear. Yes. On time. Using the time and date. Objective info only. Quoting what the client said. Absolutely. Documenting immediately when care is given. Using approved abbreviations. Leaving out subjectivity. Great. We're not using someone else's name. We're not documenting under someone else. Not adding anything other than what happened. Excellent. Legibility. Yes. This is important if we're still using paper charting. Absolutely. Documenting subjective and objective. We're clear and precise. Absolutely. All of these things are important. Documenting in real time under your name without subjective opinion. Now, these things can be difficult sometimes. It can kind of go against our grain, but it is important that we understand how to chart and doing this well. I have enjoyed so much talking legal and ethical concepts. These can be difficult to understand at times, but they are so important for our role and for our care of clients. Thank you so much for joining me. Be sure to join us on Monday, August 19th, as Lauren joins us for another free webinar on Practice NCLEX. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back next time.